So this is Citing AI Tools, and this class is brought to you by the Research Medical Library, and we are going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to begin by giving the session some focus and background. In this session, I am focusing on generative AI models. AI is a subset, or generative AI, I should say, is a subset of artificial intelligence. It uses machine learning models to create content like text and images, and it does this based on patterns and structures it learns from existing data. Some of the most well-known generative AI models are chatbots and image generators. Chatbots generate content based on prompts provided by a user. Most of us, by this point, have heard of ChatGPT, which was developed by OpenAI. Gemini, formerly known as Bard, is available from Google DeepMind. That's a subsidiary of Google. And then Copilot is a model from Microsoft. It's probably the newest, I believe the newest of the three. And it is the model that I use to generate some of the examples that we're going to look at a little later in the session. So these are just some of the most popular chatbots. And so since the boom in generative AI tools, many people involved in research are asking, can I use these tools in my research? So the use of this technology is still being discussed, but current guidelines, which I should mention are pretty sparse, suggest that generative AI tools can be used, but with limitations. Generally, authors are required to be very transparent about their use and to report their use, as well as take full responsibility for the content that these technologies generate. So another question that might come to mind for some of you is, how are AI tools being used in research? So you may have heard the buzz about these tools, but you're not yet incorporating them into your own research projects and processes. So here are some use cases. This comes from Harvard's IT group. These tools can be used as an advanced search tool. They can be used to generate new content, create summaries, synthesize information, or even review your own work to edit or enhance your writing. Pretty cool, right? So knowing that we can use these tools and how we might use them, how do I use these tools responsibly? Generally, in addition to being transparent and reporting, guidelines and style rules require exact descriptions of your use and specific details about the model you use. So in the next slides, we're going to review guidelines and rules that are available from organizations and associations most relevant to research in science and medicine. And please stop me at any point if you have any questions, and I'll try to keep my eye on the chat and pause for questions. So we're going to start with the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, or ICMJE. I apologize, the slides are text heavy. It's hard to get around that in this with the topic. So the ICMJE is an organization that produces guidelines for standardizing how authors prepare and format manuscripts for submissions to biomedical journals for publication. Most biomedical journals require compliance with these recommendations. So the ICMJE recently updated their recommendations to include some guidance on the use of AI-generated material. And so the recommendations state first that referencing AI-generated material as a primary source is not acceptable. Chatbots should not be listed as authors because they do not meet the criteria for authorship. So essentially, they aren't capable of responsibility. When authors do use AI technologies to produce content and include it in their work, they should describe how they used it. And they should do this in the cover letter and in the paper, either in the methods or acknowledgments. The recommendations go on to state that authors should be able to assert that the AI-generated material is not plagiarized, and they must provide full citations when AI-generated material is quoted. So as I mentioned, most biomedical journals require compliance with these recommendations. Commonly, a journal or association builds its policies on these recommendations and then develops specific rules around the suggestions. So next, we're going to review rules from the American Medical Association. So specific rules for citing AI tools are not yet available from the AMA. However, some sections of their style guide have been updated to provide general guidance for authors. And there is also a JAMA editorial that provides some guidance for authors and peer review to that editorial in the notes of the slide. But here are the highlights from those resources. So like the ICMJE, the American Medical Association states that AI technologies cannot be listed as authors. They also require that authors report their use of AI. If the use of the technology is part of the formal research design, it should be reported in the methods section. If it's not part of the study design, then report it in the acknowledgments. Authors have to describe the AI-generated content that is included in the paper and provide the name of the model, its version number, and manufacturer. I also wanted to note here on this slide that AMA journals or the JAMA network journals discourage the submission of clinical images generated by AI technologies. This is not in the manual, in the AMA manual. This is stated in the instructions for authors for JAMA network journals. So let's look at some examples of these rules in action, I guess I would say. So I created very basic examples based on the available guidelines. So in the case of reporting in the methods section, I referred to a section of the AMA manual on nomenclatures, which mentions AI. It's been updated to mention AI. And that's what I use to format the description of my use of an AI technology. And so that section says, for AI tools, including large language models, use a non-proprietary descriptive term. In research articles, at first mention in the abstract and in the text, provide the brand name in parentheses, along with the version number, the manufacturer, and the dates used. So you can see the highlighted text here. Copilot is the brand name of the chatbot that I used. Preview is the version number. Now, I know this isn't a number. Other chatbots like ChatGPT will have a number, like a version number. So it'll be 1.5 or 2 or 2.5. In the case of Copilot, because it's still so new, it is not using version numbers yet. It's in what they call a preview mode. So preview serves as the version number in this case. And Microsoft is the manufacturer or the developer. And then February 22nd, last week, was the date that I used the tool. So I've included all of that there. So in the case of reporting in the acknowledgments, the AMA manual instructs authors to include a description of the content that was created or edited, and the name of the tool, the version number, and the manufacturer. So this is my stab at that. So I used Copilot version preview developed by Microsoft to blah, 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 blah. You can see, and I apologize. I don't know if any editors are on the call. This is a question for them, I guess. I don't know if my punctuation is right here, but this isn't about punctuation, so I'm going to give myself a pass. What's important is that I've cited that the tool that I used here, and I've included the relevant text. And so according to APA rules, if you use a generative AI tool to facilitate your research, you are required to describe how you use the tool. The description should be included in the methods section. Unless you're writing a review paper, review papers, you would describe the use of the tool in the introduction section. So your description should include the prompts and generated responses. And this is, APA is a little different than AMA here. because each conversation with a chatbot is unique, even when the same prompt is used, you're going to get a different sort of conversation from the chatbot. And so because of this, you must provide the exact prompts and generated responses. So if you guys have ever used one of these tools, you might find that sometimes they provide very lengthy responses, or it's, like I said, it's a conversation. So you ask it several questions and it generates several responses for you. And so then it can become quite long. So APA says that lengthy conversations can be shared in an appendix of the paper. APA style rules also require authors to provide in-text citations in the body of the paper and corresponding references at the end of the paper. So unlike AMA, who really doesn't want you to do that with AI, APA says, yes, you have to do that. You have to give me an in-text citation and a reference. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Again, I created very basic examples based on the rules. So in the case of, let's say I'm writing a review paper and this is my introduction section, I'm required to provide the prompt that I used and then any portion of the relevant text that was generated in response. I also have to provide that in-text citation using the standard formatting convention of it's a parenthetical style, so parentheses, author, comma, publication year. When it comes to AI technology, the developer or the manufacturer serves as the author. And then the year of the version of the tool year. So in the case of Microsoft Copilot, even though I used it in 2024, the current version, that preview version, was developed in 2023. So that is the year that I use. So as I mentioned, when there is a lengthy conversation, it can be outlined in the appendix of the paper, and you would include the appropriate appendix in the in-text citation. So you can see that here. I have the manufacturer, Microsoft, the year of the version of the tool, and then C, Appendix A for the complete chat transcript. So one last example for APA, because we had that in-text citation in the body of the paper, we have to have a corresponding reference. So the formatting convention for AI technologies is not exactly the same, but they use at this point, they're still working things out, but they are using the template for citing software. And so that convention is the manufacturer or developer, the year of the version of the tool that you used, the name of the model, the brand name italicized, in parentheses following that, the version number. And then this is a little different, maybe than the type of reference that you normally use, like a journal article or a book, but in brackets, you have to include a brief description of the kind of model that you used. And this is to help the reader understand more about the tool or about the source. And then the last element is the URL. So here's an example of what that would look like. Microsoft is our developer. 2023 is the year of the version of the tool. Copilot is the brand name, italicized. The version number, again, in the case of Copilot, we have this preview phase, so we have that in parentheses. And then for your description, for most chatbots, you can probably just always use large language model. Sometimes they describe it as, oh gosh, what's the word? Multimodal, I think. Multimodal language model. That's also would work. But you can use either of those. And then URL, and you want to use the most direct URL that you can so that people can easily access the tool. So this would appear in your reference list. Okay, so I wanted to also talk a little bit about the Journal of Clinical Oncology specifically, because ASCO is a very relevant organization, and our authors publish in many of their journals. But the Journal of Clinical Oncology specifically has released some rules for authors in an article that's linked here for you. And they have developed some specific rules. A lot of it, again, is built on those recommendations from the ICMJE. But they have some things I think that are unique also. So the use of generative AI technologies is discouraged. They're not saying outright that you can't do it, but it's not encouraged. Manuscripts with non-human authors are not accepted. If you use an AI tool to assist in writing original research articles or clinical trial updates, then they must be noted in the acknowledgements. So they're saying specifically, if you have these types of works, then you acknowledge your use in the acknowledgements. If it's used to assist in methodology, then you're going to put it in the methods section. Like some of the other associations, they want the name of the tool, the version number, the date that you accessed, and the creator. They also want a description of your use and for which parts of your work you used the tool. But what I think is most important about the rules that they have developed is this. They say that the use of AI technologies for preparing submissions, primarily advancing the author's opinion and perspective, is forbidden. So like an editorial commentary. And for me, maybe it is just me, but I think that would be a prime, for me in my mind, if I were trying to write, an editorial or something, I might think, yeah, I'm going to go write to ChatGPT or Copilot to get help with writing that. But the JCO says, no, you cannot do that. So don't use AI for this type of work. They also say that AI technologies cannot be used when you're reviewing work submitted to JCO for peer reviewer. So if you're a reviewer, you cannot use AI technologies to perform those duties. So some important points about using AI tools. First, please check with journals. Always check with journals first before incorporating AI technologies into your research. Next, protect institutional data, including PII, PHI, and institutional intellectual property. In this slide, in the notes, I have a link to, I'm sure everyone has seen the institutional guidelines on using large language models. That came out, I believe, in April of last year. It was announced in an email from Dr. Pisters, but there was a link to our institutional guidelines. And so there are these 3 or 4 main sections where they sort of give you the main points, I guess, the things that you should consider strongly when you're thinking about using these tools. And of course, top of that list is protecting institutional data. Always make note of the model, version number, and dates a tool was used, and export or save conversations. So as we've seen, like from the associations that we looked at, all of them want you to include the model name, the version number. AMA and JCO want the dates. AMA doesn't want the date, but I would always make note of those things. Also, I'm not sure about ChatGPT, but I know Microsoft Copilot actually has an export function. So you can export your conversations into a text file. So that's an easy way to be able to save your conversations, refer back to them, or include them when you're reporting your use in your works. And then finally, please always check the content that these tools generate for accuracy. AI tools are well known to generate bad information, fake information, incomplete information, even biased information. And remember, the author is responsible for the content that they submit. So you cannot blame the AI tool, right? It cannot bear responsibility. So always check the content that these things generate for accuracy. I want to mention too that the library does have a resource dedicated to citing AI tools. We've added that to our Citing Your Work guide. There's a link to the guide in the notes of the slide, but there's a page you can see here in the screenshot that is for AI tools. We have general guidance, and then we have some publishers line. Some of the big publishers are listed there. Elsevier, Springer, BMJ, ASCO, maybe a few others. And then we have the AMA style rules and the APA style rules. And we will update these pages as more information in regard to guidelines and rules becomes available. We will include that here on this page. And then, as I just mentioned, there are institutional guidelines, and that this is a screenshot of the email that came to us from Dr. Pisters, but within the body of this email, there is a link to the institutional guidelines. So please refer to those.